Those were awesome days in Cairns, and I've been home for 2 weeks now. I realized if I kept at that level of detail in this recap, that it would be hours long. So I want to just share a few of the highlights of the trip, just to give you a flavor, not to overwhelm you with a bunch of detail, but to give you a flavor of the experiences that we had, and maybe strike up some dreams and some things that you might want to put on your to-do list at some point. And then also just some of the perceptions that I've had as a result of the trip. I really thought that the gifts of the trip were the things that occurred on the vacation. But what I've noticed is that it's really made a difference, like a huge difference since I've been home. I find myself very aware of and more deliberate and more purposeful of busyness as I start to gather my world back and wanting it to be very purposeful and it feels more soulful. I like the pace. It's a total gift of being away for a month. Um, and now let me get back to the recap, and then I'll share, in finality, something that I know is also another gift of this wonderful adventure we had. So, wonderful days in Cairns. From there, we went to Brisbane. The highlight of Brisbane was that we got to see our dear friends, the Sylvesters. Bill drove 2 hours to be able to be with us. His daughter-in-law, Colleen, and son Travis drove us in a couple of cars to Surfers Paradise. We went to the Gold Coast. It was awesome. We spent a lot of time with their whole family. Later that evening, Julian and Bronny joined us, so we were all my kids and three of his kids together. Just a great experience. And then from there, we also had our experience with the Australian animals. We got to hold the koalas, we saw the kangaroos, little joeys in pouches, the wombats, the Tasmanian devils, the kookaburra, the platypus, all of those Australian animals we also saw in Brisbane. And from there, we went to Fiji, which was so phenomenal. We stayed in a home that was right on the beach, and we could walk just in our front yard into the water, and literally knee deep water we could see these brilliant blue starfish, indigo blue, just so bright. You have to check out the Facebook pictures, it's unbelievable. And this setting, beautiful palm trees. A few of the highlights in Fiji: first of all, New Year's Eve. Our groundskeeper, Dean, had told us that he suggested we do a lovo, and this is literally cooking the food in the ground. So we went to the open air market, which in and of itself was a fabulous experience. We got, nice big pieces of, there's a couple of chickens and some beef and some pork and lots of vegetables that we're familiar with: carrots, potato, green and red peppers, capsicum as they call it, onion, garlic, sweet potato, and then we also got cassava and taro, which are their root vegetables. The experience of preparing it was almost as amazing as the eating of this glorious meal. Um, Dean taught us how to weave baskets out of palm trees that he put the root vegetables in, and this smell as it started to just sort of escape, up through the ground. It was phenomenal. It was a magical evening. Later that night, we went down to the beach. We had a beach fire. We had some fireworks with some of the neighbors. And the thing that was so profound is, because it was so dark right there on the water, you could literally, I've never seen the stars so brilliant. The Milky Way, I've never seen it so bright. And then, of course, you have the southern constellations, which is awesome. And because there isn't a house or a mountain, nothing, you could see the stars all of the way to the horizon. And it was just beautiful. The next day, New Year's Day, was also a highlight in Fiji. We had some of our darling local kids take us on a hike. We hiked all the way up a mountain, back and forth through the stream several times. Had these beautiful waterfalls. We had the place to ourselves. And it was a gorgeous grove, tall cliffs. The kids were jumping off the cliffs. Made me a little nervous, into the water, but we just basked in this beautiful, serene place. Beautiful New Year's Day for us in Fiji. The other highlight in Fiji was the shark dive. Um, this was phenomenal experience. I have never seen so many beautiful and amazing fish in my life. In all my diving experiences, we saw bull sharks that were just zipping past our heads. They're really aggressive animals. We saw nurse sharks, lemon sharks, black and white tip sharks. But in addition to that, I mean, wherever these sharks are with all that food, all the fish know, they can pick up on the scraps. And so they're amazing, amazing fish of all colors, tangs, wrasses, butterflies. Just when I descended into the water, I was about 3 feet down, and I turned around. I saw the most enormous fish I've ever seen in my life. It was a grouper bigger than me, just kind of sitting there. So that was really definitely a highlight there for us in Fiji. From Fiji, we went to New Zealand. We stayed on Lake Wakatipu. That is the bluest water I have ever seen in my life. Now, New Zealand, Queenstown is where we went first, is really considered the adventure capital of the world. And it was so fun to see the kids achieve some of their adventures, to go bungee jumping off the fourth highest bungee jump in the world, to do the canyon swing. Ray and I paraglided, which was the first time for that for both of us. The other highlights there, Milford Sound was the Fjordlands, so gorgeous, breathtaking. You just think, how can this even exist? On our way back down from Milford Sound, we stopped at a glacier. It was warm outside. We walked on this glacier. I was in flip-flops. The kids climbed down and through the glacier. I walked up and around, and we literally walked through a glacier, on a glacier and through a glacier. It was just really, you could see how it cut its way through the mountains, and here we were walking on this amazing feat of nature and in flip-flops. Truly one of the highlights, I have to say, of my whole life. I made myself some notes here. So the kids were with us 4 days in New Zealand, and then they went home, and while we were all together, we did the shot over jet ride. Just had a lot of adventures, a lot of great meals. And then once they went back home, Ray and I had a week left in New Zealand. We flew from Queenstown to Christchurch, rented a car, and we drove up the Kaikoura coast. We went all the way up to the most northerly tip of the South Island. We went kayaking in Golden Bay. We took the ferry across to Wellington. In Wellington, we rented another car, and we just kept driving. We see this beautiful scenery, beautiful country, green land that we passed as we got to see a lot of New Zealand because we drove so much. We went to Rotorua. We stayed at Lake Taupo one night, then went to Rotorua, where we saw the sort of geothermal and a lot of the Maori culture. From there, we went to the Waitomo and saw the glowworm caves. Ray thought that this was going to be kind of a corny aspect of the trip, and it was one of his favorite. Those glowworms in those beautiful caves, stalactites, stalagmites, just absolutely amazing. I must disclose that they asked for a volunteer to sing so that they could demonstrate the acoustics in the cave, and I volunteered. It was a highlight for me. I sang O mio babino caro and remembered the Italian as well as I could, but it was a great experience. From there, we went to Auckland and enjoyed that city for an evening and a morning down at the harbor before we completed our trip. And so now being home and having the perspective of that month away, one thing I know is I am so grateful for my life. I love my business. I love what I do day in and day out. I also know that I want more of that, that vacationing. I want more of that, not less. I want more time with my sweetheart, not less. I want more adventures like that with my children. And I hope you feel a little bit inspired by that as well. This year, 2012, that lies ahead for all of us, I ask myself, what is the theme for this year? And I played with a lot of different words and came up with one that I think is the direct result of this trip. And that is mindfulness. I want this to be a year of mindfulness. And that word says so much to me. It says everything from presence to deliberate, to drinking it in, to awareness, to not missing anything, just being completely here. And so with that, I invite you to dream really big. What things are you putting off? Now is the time, guys. This is it. This is it. This is the time. It's here. Make your life what you want it to be. Reach for the things and create the vehicles that you need to reach and do the things that you want to do. And pick a theme for the year. Mine is mindfulness. Thanks to a brilliant month down under. Blessings.